This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm excellent.
We're melting upstairs today.
I know.
It's just so hot. I don't know what's happening here. It's like we didn't have much of we had like a long spring, and then we didn't have any kind of transition into summer, and then it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was like
fires popping up everywhere.
I know, it was like instant hot.
You know, you recently got back from DC going to the police memorial, and it had me thinking about how a lot of people have this sort of unspoken survivor's guilt that they never really talk about. And I thought that we can kind of open things up a little bit today.
Yeah. You know, so we had an officer 10, 11 years ago, pass away in a traffic accident. And I know some of my partners, like I knew him. I was not close to him, and I would never say I was, because I wasn't. But I know some of my partners were. And I don't think they've ever unpackaged the trauma associated to it. And they were holding on to it, and they've held on to it for so long, and they've utilized different aspects of life to kind of push those emotions down, to push those feelings down. And I think going to that memorial, seeing his family, being able to reconnect with them, almost having that closure to this incident was very important for them, because I don't think they ever fully healed from that. And I'm not saying you're going to always 100% heal from it. You're still going to grieve that loss. You're still going to have that. But to have closure, to have almost that healing moment, I think is really good for people.
You know what's crazy to think about is that at that time, and with those particular officers that you're talking about, they're all just a bit older than you. At that time, the whole understanding PTSD in law enforcement and like normalizing the badge, like all of that didn't exist yet. And so that was a much more, it was a different time to lose somebody than it would be now. Not to say either one would be any easier, but as far as the openness, the support, the resources, kind of a pathway of being able to talk about things, it was quite different then.
Yeah, it was still, rub some dirt on it and keep moving forward, and, having conversations with your buddies, and that's about all you had. Where now it's changed because there's so many resources available, being able to have those outlets, being able to healthily go through the grieving process and not have to hold on to something without being able to go through that process.
Yeah, because as a first responder, you're really trained to just move on quickly, stay sharp, carry on. And when someone doesn't make it, whether it's your partner, a civilian, a stranger, I think it really leaves a mark. And that invisible weight of survival can often be masked and even buried beneath duty sometimes. And when that happens, it can be misunderstood not only by people close to you, but even by you in the way that you're acting or reacting in certain situations.
Yeah, and you're basing your responses based off of your former experience and based off of what you know and your knowledge associated to things. And, as law enforcement, as a first responder, we compartmentalize a lot of those feelings and those emotions, and it's okay to do. but you also need to know how to unrestrain yourself of some of that stuff when it's starting to have a negative impact on your life.
Yeah, and I know for me, I've learned how to grieve the dead, but I've also learned how to grieve the living. And it's crazy what happens to you emotionally when you have this loop playing and you might not even realize it. And so you could be playing that incident over and over again, or even obsessed with what you could have done differently, or even what everybody else says that you did right. And I think that this kind of fuels the self-blame and even that emotional exhaustion that sometimes happens.
Yeah, because you could have done everything right in a specific scenario. It doesn't mean that you feel good about having to do, say it was an officer involved shooting, say it was having to respond to that child death, or it doesn't mean that there's not emotional attachment to that. Being able to recognize that and address those issues in a healthy manner is really important.
Another example of survivor's guilt is that you could avoid talking about the call or the event altogether. And if you haven't been the person to do this yourself, and I'm sure you might have seen this before, where you or that person goes completely silent, or they just shut down whenever that incident is brought up. And this creates a lot of that eternal buildup of the grief without any kind of release.
Yeah, and I also think it's a safety concern on the back end, because if you're shutting down just in conversation on it and you respond to a similar incident in the future and you are physically and mentally shutting down in reference to that, to where you're not able to react and respond as you would need to.
Yeah, and if this is you might also suffer with not being able to actually celebrate any kind of life events or promotions. So you feel like maybe you didn't earn it, or that this particular milestone that you're now at shouldn't be you because someone else didn't make it. And this really undermines your self-worth, and it actually breeds a lot of quiet resentment when this happens.
Yeah, you need to be accepting and caring and loving about you've achieved these goals, you've achieved this, and it's not always, it's holding on to something that you have no control over and being able to not expand upon what's going on mentally or physically associated to it is just holding you back more, and you are worth it.
I recently told somebody how proud I was of them for breaking their own silence. And they said, I have never shared any of this with anybody else before. And so I'm explaining that because there is no time frame for any of this. Like if it's been 1 week or it's been 1 decade, like there is no particular time where it's okay to just like, now is the time. But if you've been holding on to anything for a very long time, you need to know that once that time comes and you decide to make that leap and not carry everyone else's pain and then ignore your own, it's really going to allow you to be able to increase that emotional healing instead of just suppressing it.
Yeah, and finding avenues to where you can let that stuff go and not hold on to it for so long is important. Finding those healthy avenues to be able to push it out there and talk about it and have that conversation with somebody is very important.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize is like just how amazing our brain is. It's constantly working for us. We're constantly adapting, and most importantly, we're constantly trying to survive. And so when those emotions, those feelings, that suppression starts to take place, I think it's so cool because it's like the information that's populating on your computer screen, and you can either glance over and start to read what it's saying, or you can just open up another tab and then ignore it. And so it's amazing when we decide to sit there with intent and then to examine what's actually being told to us because of the thoughts that we're having. And when we're feeling that and we identify that, we can actually start to name what that feeling is, and we don't have to judge ourselves, right? Like this is such an intimate experience to be able to tell ourselves like, wow, that's really sad. Like I'm feeling really sad, and labeling that emotion and actually identifying it. And like just saying that alone might help you to be able to release some of it.
Yeah, being able to recognize it and recognize like like we do with our cell phones, like Ashley said with the computer and being able to open up a new tab, the more and more you do that, the more and more it gets buried, but your processing system slows down and you're not able to actually effectively start healing from it.
I think too, it's important to find little ways to be able to honor that person or the people that lost in a way that heals you. I have my mom's urn. Those ashes mean nothing to me. I've contemplated many times dumping them next to my well here at my house because that was my mom's biggest, like she always wanted to have a well. So I have no emotional attachment to that. However, I have a picture next to her urn. And whenever Clint gets me flowers, something that I will do is I will always take one of those and I put it by her picture. And that's like my own little private ritual, right? Like nobody knows that except for now. Like obviously Clint knows that, but like that's such a private, intimate thing that I've never shared with anybody. And I never had a reason to do that apart from the fact that it makes me feel good to have that connection with her.
Yeah, being able to have those little moments that shared experience with yourself and that someone who you loved and lost, and being able to have those individualized moments is important because, one, it's giving you that peace with you and that person.
Ultimately, it's so important to separate your responsibility from the outcome, because how many times do we know somebody who has done everything right and still things didn't go the way that they panned out? And ultimately, there could be times where you might even lose somebody as a result of it, and it's not your fault. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.